Well, hello, everybody. Today I have with me Stephen Kaplan, the playwright of our upcoming May production, Tracy Jones. Stephen, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm great. So wonderful to meet you.
You too, you too.
So, Stephen, before we jump into your comedy, this play that you've written, first I want to ask you a little bit about how you came to be a playwright. Like how are you here in the now? What kind of steps led you to become who you are today?
Sure. I've always been involved in theater and loved theater. I was doing shows in my living room, for my family when I was very little. And any opportunity that I had to see theater, to be part of theater, I just did. Um, I think my parents were very involved in theater, and I remember going to our local community theater with them when I was really little, and I think they thought buying a ticket for me and me falling asleep would be cheaper than hiring a babysitter. And I ended up though staying up and awake watching these shows and just loving them. And so always I started off wanting to be a performer, and I did perform for a long time. And I actually wrote my first play because I was doing a high school uh, summer program, musical theater program at Carnegie Mellon University, and they had a playwriting elective you could take. And I thought, well, sure, I've always liked writing. I'd never written a play, never even really thought about it, and something just kind of clicked in there in that elective. All my classmates were writing 2 to 3 page sketches, and I wrote a full one act play that ended up being produced and winning a bunch of young playwrights competitions. And I thought, wow, this is something I love to do. So yeah, I wrote my first play when I was 15, which was just 2 years ago, and have been doing it ever since.
Well, awesome. I love to hear that. Yeah, I definitely get it. I think there's a lot of us theater artists that we kind of found this passion in one way or another just by sheer entertainment. Like literally, I can attest to the same thing of just I used to just do little performances, little skits in my living room for my mom, would just be like, "Hey, my friends and I were bored. We're gonna do this thing now." And she's like, "Okay, here you go." And so now that I'm working for a professional theater company, I think my mom and any of my friends growing up are like, "Yeah, that doesn't surprise us at all."
Exactly.
Well, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about Tracy Jones. I'd love to, and again, feel free, you can throw in any information you'd like about this, but I'd love to hear one, at least for the audience, a brief little summary of the show, and then kind of tell us about what inspired you to write the show and kind of where this idea kind of came from.
Sure. I So Tracy Jones is a play about Tracy Jones. It'd be a pretty bad title if it wasn't. And she has rented out the back party room of the Jones Street Bar and Grill, the place for wings and things. And she's throwing a party to which she has invited every woman in the world named Tracy Jones. And the play starts about an hour into the party. This is no spoiler alert because it's the very first thing that happens in the play, and nobody's there. Nobody has come to see to this party. So it is not a solo play though. So there are people that show up, and I wanted to explore the ideas of loneliness, the ideas of connection, how we try to find connection between people. It's something that I actually wrote the very first draft of the, not even first draft, I wrote the first, I think, 5 pages of the play. And I always knew it was called Tracy Jones. I wrote it about 20 years ago. And I had this sense, this woman inviting these people. I didn't really know much more than that. It was set in her apartment at the time. It wasn't in, the location that it is now. But for me, uh, I've always been somebody that I like people. I love meeting people. It's why I love doing theater and I don't write novels because you have to have people when you do theater. Um, and I remember just always getting excited anytime I'd meet another Stephen with a PH. Just there's something about that was exciting to me. Um, and I remember one other time that I met another Kaplan, and even though Kaplan is a common name, I didn't know very many Kaplans growing up. The Kaplan side of my family is very small, and I remember meeting somebody, and I was so excited, and I just said, "Oh, maybe we're related," and and they said, "Yeah, Kaplan is like Smith for the Jews," um, and and I remember what the thing that I reacted to was just how dismissive it was, and how I felt like I was reaching out. I was trying to communicate and connect with this person, and just felt so rebuffed. Um, and so wanted to explore this idea of kind of what makes people want to reach out to other people, and what makes other people very hesitant about that. And it even though I wrote the first draft of it, I wrote, the first 5 pages years ago, but the first full draft of the current version in 2019, before the pandemic just made it feel, sadly, even more relevant. And kind of as we all felt our need to connect with other people and our need to create community. So that's a little bit about the play.
Yeah, no, that's wow, that's so interesting that yeah, you'd written this, 5 years ago. When you said, if you're only 17 years old, you would have been
I,
very young, to have written that, long 20 years ago. But no, it's what's really fascinating to me about this. So we actually have a fairly new book club that we started with Lamb, where we read a play once a month, and then we get together and we talk about it. And some of the plays in our book club we actually produce as part of our season, and then some are just shows that we're like, oh, we'll probably never get the chance to see these kind of in our area, whether the demographic is like it's an all black cast, and it's like we just don't have that we can do here. And so we did read your play, Tracy Jones, for the book club. And one of the questions that somebody had brought up is they were like, well, when was this written? Because we had thought about how interesting it would be if you decided to put the setting of this in the pandemic, and if the Jilly character comes in with a face mask on and is like, hey, there's these people, and I was talking to our artistic director, Russ, and he was like, no, he wrote this prior to the pandemic. I'm like, that's fascinating because it works so well with what we're currently going through, or what, well, yeah, I think part of what we're still
oh,
kind of
yeah.
coming out of. And yeah, it's been really interesting. It was very fascinating to read it, and have that idea in mind. And so now knowing this, and I'm excited. I'll have to tell the book club people, be like, okay, so I talked to Stephen. This is what he said. And
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, there's only, I think there's a reference to Zoom in the play now. That
yeah,
was done after, but I think beyond that, that's the only edit that I made that was kind of taking COVID and all that into consideration. Yeah, no, it's, I mean, I think these feelings of loneliness and of connection are, that's what we're writing about. I mean, I think it's oh my gosh, Ian Forster, who has the idea of, only connect, this idea that hopefully I'm not misquoting someone, but that's, for me, what I feel I write about a lot, just people trying to connect with each other and find the way into just relationships.
yeah. Well, and that's so heavily and deeply what theater is it is that connection, whether it's characters on stage connecting with each other, or it's us as an audience connecting to what we're experiencing, and how we can leave and go, wow, there was a part of me in that character in this moment, and I really find myself in tune with that. And for me, that's what I love about theater, is I love those conversations that theater inspires and instigates. Yeah, it's so fascinating, and your play is both so funny. My goodness, like I had just read the first 5 pages like a year ago, when we kind of done the announcement that we were doing this, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a fun one, just right off the bat, how funny it is, and then it just kind of evolves and yet devolves in a sense
Yeah.
of craziness. And it's so fun as we slowly, again, without spoilers, as we kind of introduce a few other characters throughout. Um, yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for people to see your show and to have them be able to come in and experience this in a sense that they can laugh, but they can also that they can connect with that theme of loneliness that we find throughout.
Yeah, yeah. I think when I finished the first draft, I created it in a writers group that I was part of, and one of the other writers in the group said, "You've written a sad farce." That's how he described it. And I said, "That's yeah." I mean, because there, that's the way I see the world. I feel like I mean, there's so much that we have to laugh at. We have to be able to find the comedy in it and the lightness. But there's also, there's serious things that are going on. And when you're dealing with loneliness, for me, it felt like it'd be very dishonest to these characters and to the idea of loneliness if I didn't take it seriously as well. So there are serious moments in the play, but I hope that people and the people that have seen it, in other productions, that's the biggest compliment for me. That people saying, I laughed through my tears or things like that, which is the best compliment I could get from someone.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because so a dear friend of mine is actually playing our protagonist, Tracy
Oh,
Jones. And after reading it for book club, I was like, Jamie, I'm like, you've got a hard task in front of you because Tracy, in many ways, is very unlikable and she's really hard. And we kind of made this joke in our book club discussion about she reaches out to like thousands of Tracy Jones, and the fact, like you said, the first initial point of the play, we're an hour in and nobody has shown up, and we're all like, what did she do? Like, what did she write in these letters that she sent out to people and in these emails and these texts? Like, you would think that like some people, and of course there's suspension of disbelief. We are in the world of the play, but we were just talking about, man, this woman must be unhinged. She must be crazy in some sense of like, what did she say to these people to make people go, I do not want to go for free food and just to play all these activities and these fun games.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the I've joked with the productions that I've been involved with. Initially, I always say that the characters there, it's like the island of misfit toys. That they're all lost in a certain way, and and a reason why, for their various reasons, why they haven't been connecting with other people. I think that's something that they're all damaged in some way, but also all so hopeful. That's the thing with Tracy. I think you're right. There's times you just want to shake her, and but also I hope we're rooting for her too, because her desire is so strong. Which is also kind of, I think, the basis of comedy. People have to want things really badly, or else the stakes aren't high enough.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'm curious, Stephen, how many other productions of Tracy Jones have you had since you've written this? Between your how many years ago writing the first 5 pages versus where it's come along now? Yeah.
Yeah, so the first production was actually supposed to be in, I think it was May 2020, I think is when they were supposed to do it. And that obviously did not happen. Um, but the beauty of actually it being pushed back, though, is it was part of something called a rolling world premiere. The National New Play Network, which is a tremendous organization whose whole mission is to get new plays in front of audiences and finding different ways to do that. And there's a really great program they have called this Rolling World Premiere, where if three member theaters of the National New Play Network commit to producing the same play, I think it's within 18 months of each other. It unlocks funding, and the theaters get extra money for their productions. And as a playwright, it was one of the most incredible opportunities, because within each production, from production to production, I was able to make changes. It was completely different casts, completely different kinds of theaters. The first theater was in Rochester, New York, and was a 300 some odd seat proscenium house. The second production was in Michigan, and it was, I think, just about a 99 seat thrust stage. We were right in the action. And then finally in Florida, and I think again that was about a 99 seat, back to proscenium. But so different spaces, different geographical settings, different design teams, and I got to learn a lot about the play through that. And so there were those three productions. There was another production this past fall in New Jersey, actually at the theater where I wrote it initially in their writers group, so that was really lovely. And then there've been a couple other productions since, and now all of you. So yeah, I've been really happy to get Tracy out into the world.
That's so awesome. I love to hear that. And yeah, how fun to as a playwright, to be able to kind of slowly bring this to life and workshop it and go, oh, let's make these changes and because we work with a lot of new playwrights, and so that's always fun on our end of if we want to try something. And like just earlier in this season, I had directed a show. We had the playwright come, and I had done something as a director. I made just a small minor choice, and he talked to me afterwards. He said, I'm going to add that into my script. I really liked how that worked. And so it's so fun how collaborative theater is constantly, and we're all workshopping and working things together.
Exactly. And again, going back to why I love theater, so much, in this idea that theater cannot happen without the people working together on the production and without the audience. That's the final ingredient that that is so crucial, and why theater is something that I feel like, as many people say, oh, theater's dying or people aren't as interested. There's something that theater gives us as audience members that we can't get anywhere else. So I love that, exactly like you said. Why theater is why we do what we do.
Yeah. I think I have one other question about Tracy Jones specifically. Is there's a lot of maybe our audiences don't know this, but there's a lot of food elements involved in this. As you said, it takes place in a Jones Street bar and grill. What was because, and this is very interesting to me that you said it originally, this idea took place in her apartment. So how did how did you get to this point of, instead of making it in her apartment, deciding to put it in this like kind of bar and grill? And how did all these like food elements kind of come along as well?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I wish I knew, kind of. I think what it was, when I then kind of decided where she was, um, I wanted to push her out of her element. So her apartment felt just too safe. I wanted to put her in an environment that felt a little more foreign and strange, and would also emphasize the loneliness a little bit. And I think there's something about the like these back party rooms of chain restaurants that feel so like they're trying so hard to be happy and festive, and yet they're so almost devoid of personality. So there was something about the setting. We talked early on, in the Rolling World premiere, when I was talking to the set designers, that the set is another character, in a sense, that um, you know, like these people saying, look at me, connect with me. I think the set is trying to do that as well. This restaurant saying, pay attention to me. And there was something, when I started thinking about all of the food elements too. I know costume designers get very angry with me because things get a little messy. But just to add to the fun of the piece, but also I don't know, there's something also that there's nothing sadder to me than, all of this food and no one there to eat it. There, so that's, I think, kind of the rationale behind all of those different choices.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and especially kind of, it's one of those things like you don't actively think about or acknowledge it, and then you just said it, and I went, oh, you're so right that this restaurant, that this location is another character, especially because it's null and void of these people being here. And then we have this character that has these very strict rules of what has to occur while we're in this location. And it adds into that loneliness and kind of isolation. Oh man, now I'm gonna be really interested to watch our production and just lean into that and be like, oh yeah, I see it now. How fascinating! I love this about these conversations, especially with the creator. How fun! um, well, before I have one more question I want to ask you, but do you have anything else you want to add about Tracy Jones? Anything else you want to say pertaining to the show that you have written?
Um, the only thing is, I put this plea out there, for anybody who knows a Tracy Jones to get in touch with me, because I've actually only there's one. I'm now friends with the Tracy Jones on Facebook, who saw something about the play, and then we became friends, which was kind of a bizarre thing. But that's the only thing I would say, that I'm always excited to connect Tracy Joneses to the play.
Well, awesome. Yeah. And if somehow someday if I happen to run into another Stephen Kaplan and especially if his first name and his last name are spelled the exact same, I'm for sure throwing him your way. So
Please do, please do. Yeah, I know there's at least one other out there, because because I tried to get StephenKaplan.com as my website, and he owns it. So I'm by Stephen Kaplan, BY. I know that at least one other exists.
There you go. Well, my kind of last question for you, Stephen, is do you have any advice for anybody that might be an aspiring writer or a playwright of just what if you have any thoughts to kind of give out to people that are like, oh, I've always wanted to try this, or maybe they're in the beginning stages, or maybe they're in the middle and they're still struggling through. If you have any words of wisdom to throw out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing I'd say is just write. Go ahead and write something. I think that uh, we think that we have to be an expert on something before we jump in sometimes, and I I think if you wait until you're ready, you're never going to be ready. You're always going to have an excuse for it. So if anybody's interested in writing for the theater, go and try it. And write something, hear it out loud, get a group of people together, get some of your friends together, order a pizza, sit around your living room and read it out loud and see what you've created, because uh, that's how we hear it. We hear, there. I always say it's always perfect in my head, and then suddenly I hear actors or anybody else read. I go, "Oh God, that sounds awful. Who wrote that crap?" And I go, "It was me." But because we talked about earlier, that the collaboration and the necessity of other people. So just to go do it, and then to see theater, to read plays, to just expose yourself to as many things as possible, because we learn from others. We see kind of what works and also what resonates with us, and go, oh, okay, this resonated with me for this reason. This didn't resonate with me, and I think that's actually very useful as well, to go, okay, that's not the kind of writer I want to be. So that'd be my advice.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. And it's first off, yes, you're right. Like if you want to write, theater, like okay, go and see theater. Like sure, you can try your hand at it, but it always helps. It's the best directors were actors first. It's the same thing of like you got to know what you're getting yourself into,
Right.
and it's funny because kind of tying back a little bit, I talked about our book club when we had read your play. There were a few members who were like, "Yeah, I didn't understand this thing," or they're like, "I just, it doesn't fully like grasp." And I'm like, "Well, the thing is with a script is sure read it all you want, but theater needs to be seen, not read." And so we were just talking about like just wait till you can see this up on stage and it's going to be a completely new beast than just reading it.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the first things in the revisions that I did, over the three Rolling World premiere productions. That first production had the most revisions to it, because it was the first time seeing it on its feet. And the play is meant to be physical. I mean, it's a farce in some ways. But I always joke it's a farce with one door. And but you're exactly right. Theater is, well, we can read it, and oftentimes people are exposed to theater and plays for the first time in a classroom. um, Theater is not really meant to be read. It's not literature in the same sort of way. It's meant to be alive. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This actually just made me think of something. Did you or do you find it difficult or interesting, to try and be writing comedy, especially with Tracy Jones that has kind of these farcical elements to it, that are very physical? Do you find that difficult to like write and then to kind of see it brought to life and like, oh, this isn't quite how I had imagined it, or in the details and how you write it of like making sure that it is being properly done the way it needs to be? I don't know.
It varies. Because I've acted as well. I know kind of as an actor what feels comfortable for me, physically. I'm also a director, so I think kind of, okay, how I try not to direct on the page as much as I can, but to give opportunities for that. Again, one thing we did learn in that first production, um, there are some vegetables and wings that get moved a lot in the play, and we did map out in that first production exactly when they have to move, because it is precise as far as where they go. You're just keeping the map of that, and that was something that I didn't quite figure out until it was on its feet. But otherwise, I try to at least envision kind of what it could look like. And then again, love when an actor does something that's even more amazing. And I go, oh, I thought this, but this is great. Or a director brings something and goes, hey, what if we tried this? So yeah, I try to give, I feel like my job as a playwright is to give the most solid blueprint I can, but then to let the builders and decorators, and designers build upon that.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, as a playwright to provide the blueprint and then to see where it goes from there. That's great. Yeah, I really like. I'm going to steal that, Stephen. Don't worry.
Go
I'll
ahead.
I'll, I'll quote you.
I probably stole it from someone myself, so you're more than
That's how it
welcome.
is. That's we're always borrowing and using from each other. Well, Stephen, before we kind of wrap it up, I would love to hear, if you want to tell our audience where they can find more information about you, your website and everything like that.
Sure. So as I said before, my website is bystephenkaplan.com, Bystephen, Kaplan. I'm a Stephen with a PH. So you can find out information from me there. When you first go on, it'll say if you want to join my newsletter. I think I send like 3 or 4 a year, just kind of when I have updates. So it's, I'm not spamming your inbox. But you can find out about me there. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, all of that. So yeah, please, anybody who's interested, love to tell you more about the other work that I'm working on.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, thank you, Stephen, for joining us today. And Stephen's show, Tracy Jones, will be running at Lamb Theater, located in the Klinger Neal Theater at 3700 Peters Avenue from May 10th through the 19th. So please come join us and see Stephen's wonderful comedy, Tracy Jones. So thank you again so much, Stephen.
Thank you so much.